myself, declares the Lord, that Basra will become an object of horror, a reproach, a ruin, and a curse, and all its cities will become perpetual ruins. I've heard the message from the Lord, and an envoy is sent among the nations, saying, Gather yourselves together and come against her and rise up for battle. For behold, I have made you small among the nations, despised among men. As for the terror of you, the arrogance of your heart has deceived you. O you who live in the clefts of the rock, who occupy the height of the hill. Though you make your nest as high as an eagle's, I will bring you down from there, declares the Lord. Edom will become an object of horror. Everyone who passes by it will be horrified and will hiss at all its wounds. Like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah with its neighbors, says the Lord, no one will live there, nor will a man reside in it. Behold, one will come up like a lion from the thickets of the Jordan against a perennially watered pasture, and in an instant I will make him run away from it. And whoever is chosen I shall appoint over it. For who is like me, and who will summon me into court? And who then is the shepherd who can stand against me? Therefore hear the plan of the Lord which he has planned against Edom, and his purposes which he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely they will drag them off, even the little ones of the flock. Surely he will make their pasture desolate because of them. The earth has quaked at the noise of their downfall. There is an outcry. The noise of it is heard at the Red Sea. Behold, he will mount up and swoop like an eagle and spread out his wings against Basra. And the hearts of the mighty men of Edom in that day will be like the heart of a woman in labor. So Basra also will fall. And I think this is a couple of places they refer to the Lord sweeping down like an eagle. And if you think of I'm a picture person in my head, so I immediately thought of the eagle, wings really not just like we see on our, well, we kind of on our own logo here for the United States, where the eagles or the wings are really widespread, and those claws, those talons are out in front, ready to attack. And that picture, I thought, well, it's definitely coming. So that was a really interesting picture, because we know we are lifted up on wings like eagles by the Lord's power and different things like that. But in this case, we're seeing the Lord attack like an eagle with the talons out. Let's see. Okay. Then in verse 4 of Isaiah 34, let me see where I put this. I'm going to put that one here. I need to go back to it. It says he'll come with vengeance against those who are against Judah and Jerusalem. I think I've said that already. I'm sorry. Another passage that she has brought out here that we want to take a look at that kind of goes along with this Isaiah 63. We're back to that one here again. So remember in Isaiah 63, if I can find my paper there. Yes. That's that one that shows Jesus coming as a victor. And in Isaiah 11:41, it mentions, he will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall. Now, this actually is referring back to the king who will do as he pleases. It's not referring to Jesus or anything, but it's talking about. Remember that's the one he'll be battling. He enters Israel, and then we know that Edom, Moab, and Ammon are rescued from his hand. We kind of talked about that a little earlier. But that's where that verse reference comes from, and to tie those things together, why Edom is spared right now, and Ammon and Moab are too. And that reference was Daniel 11:41. Let me get back to that last referral there. Then we see. We did look at Habakkuk, chapter 3, verses 3 to 15. Here's where she clarifies for us in our lesson that Teman and Mount Paran are in Edom. What she wanted us to see here from this one was where the Lord comes from and why. So what did you find for that? Anybody? That's where he comes in, and then he starts his whole excursion to trample through the winepress and everything. He's going to march through the earth in indignation, trampling the nations in anger. It does say before him goes pestilence, the plague comes after, and he is going forth for the salvation of his people and his anointed. I don't know if there was any certain part of that. You did look at that in your lesson and everything too, so. Well, okay, if we move on to Joel that we looked at next, okay. Get where I need to be for this. Okay. I'm just kind of reviewing here with between my, I did this at home, but it's harder when you're standing up in front of people. Let's see. So on day 5, we started looking at Joel. She had that printed out for us, Joel 2:30 to 3:21. That's on verse 129 and 130. We marked nations and everything we learned about them. We marked Day of the Lord and in that day and those kind of things. And then, so do we learn anything new about the nations from Joel? It'll become their judgment is going to be coming, and it'll come to the valley of Jehoshaphat, where God will sit to judge the nations. They are being judged because they have scattered Israel among the nations. They've persecuted them throughout, and they. I always think this is when you hear the backstory. I always think this is amazing. They feel like they are the master of their own destiny. They are marching against the Lord and everything, but the scripture says in chapter 3, verse 2, that, well, where is it? Here it is. Okay. I will gather all the nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. So here they feel like they are instigating all this battle time and everything, but the Lord's actually drawing them there for their final confrontation as well. It says they are being judged because they have scattered Israel among the nations, divided up God's land, and cast lots for his people, sold his people. They're going to have the same thing happen to them, and then they're also going to be destroyed. It mentions, we know that this is going out, the evil spirits go out like frog to summon these kings and everything, but then here in verse 9, God has spoken, proclaim this among the nations, prepare a war. So we know that's behind that too. And that's, Satan definitely is the father of lies. He lies to himself too. He doesn't even know he's a puppet in God's hands. He thinks he's controlling all of that. Thank heavens. I mean, whew. What'd you say about the wine press? I'm sorry. Yeah, there's more reference to the wine press. That's in verse 13. What similarities did you see with verses from Revelation throughout this passage in Joel. Yep. Yeah, the wine press is always outside the city. That was an unclean function, so they made sure they would fix the wine press, fix things in the wine press there, and then, but it would be outside the city. And it does say the wine press is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. The verses in Revelation that correlate with that are Revelation 14 to 19. We also include verse 20 with that. And also in Revelation 19:15. We also see those references to the day of the Lord, and that is Revelation 6:17 and Revelation 8:12, when the sun and moon grow dark. Yeah, that's those there. We do know with how Joel fits into this for us to look at that, because we know survivors from Jerusalem will call on the Lord's name. If you look at Joel 2:32, which was not in our, yeah, it's here. I'm sorry. It will come about that whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be delivered. For on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there will be those who escape, and we know that there will be some of them exiled and escape, as the Lord has said, even among the survivors whom the Lord calls. And then we know restoration's coming from them, because it says, for behold, in those days and at that time when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem. So we know it's good things coming for Judah and Jerusalem. We also know Edom's judgment will have taken place. Look at 3:19. We know that Egypt will become a waste and Edom will become a desolate wilderness because of the violence done to the sons of Judah. And God will avenge the blood of his people Israel. That's in verse 21. Okay. Before we leave all of this, I did want to make sure we talked about to review again about, we're kind of now in this day 5 of our Bible study. We jog back to Zechariah 14. It says, what does God do to those who fought against Jerusalem? We talked about some of the plagues, but then it has us go into how gruesome they were. Yeah, they just kind of, I mentioned the panic and stuff like that, but there's also those plagues are going to make their flesh rot, their eyes and their tongue and everything. And do you know that there are chemicals around that you have to be so very careful, because that's what happens. So I don't know if it's some of the fallout from them, the weapons they choose or what, or if it's just, God's using this as a plague. But we know that kind of thing can happen already with stuff that man has discovered too, and the Lord's going to be using that to bring this plague all about. That was not a study on my part. That just sort of popped up in the conversation with somebody totally unrelated, and I thought, oh, yuck. So I thought I'd just share that. Yeah, it's out there. This can definitely happen. This is not out of the realm of our thinking. So what happens to Jerusalem in verse 2 of Joel 3:2? Hang on, you'll have to read it out loud. I've lost my Joel here. Yep, I have. Here it is. Well, that's not the. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on page 119, and we were supposed to be looking at Zechariah. I'm sorry. I messed that up. In 14:2. Of course, we know we've kind of discussed that earlier. that the city will be captured, houses plundered, women ravished, and half the city exiled. And then coming up in verse 4, where will our Lord's feet stand? On the Mount of Olives. And then what happens to it? It will split in half. And that was about this time. This is where I thought, I got to have a map, because I don't know north, south, east, or west or anything. And I think this is north up here, I'm pretty sure. But this is the way you always see these maps configured, so I'm sure it is. So here's the Mount of Olives. So to split from east to west is just across here. And like I said, this is not to scale, because this actually may be more level with where the Jordan River is. So if it splits, that might be a way of escape for exiles, or coming south like this might be a way of escape for them. It's just unsure. But they, other references that we've also read in the past are in Matthew 24 and 25, where it says to flee. All those when the day of the Lord comes. We don't know if it's that day or if they see signs of it and can flee before. We're forewarned, so if we're in Israel and we see this stuff happening, we can flee ahead of all this stuff too. So if we're there visiting or something, but half of the mountain will move towards the north and half will move towards the south. I also tried to track down where it says what happens to Jerusalem. It will rise and remain in its site from Benjamin's gate to as far as the first gate, to the corner gate, and from the tower of Hananel to the king's wine presses, which we know was outside the city. And the best I could do with trying to figure that out was to know that the temple is in that area. The earthly temple is in that area. What happens to the people of Jerusalem? They will not be cut off. They will flee by the valley of God's mountains, it says. And or part of them can live in Jerusalem in security. And she ends it. It says, "Who will be king?" Verse 9 of this is Zechariah 12, I believe. 14. Zechariah 14. Who will be king? The Lord will be king. And I don't know why I've got... I totally turned it. Yeah, the Lord will be king over all the earth. In that day, he'll be the only one, and his name will be only one. Anything else I can tell you about? Any more? Do you need more description on what I was thinking when I did this map or anything? What I do know what I do need to point out here. I'm glad I said it that way, because I thought, yes, you do. So we know that Satan, or the beast and his armies, come over here. They're going to camp against Judah and Jerusalem. But what we haven't gone over yet was, we know Isaiah 34, this is what I put on here, 34 verses 5 and 6, the Lord descends to Basra, which is in Edom, to protect his remnant. We also know he comes around up through here. There's the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's one more. That's the wine press, is where they kind of loosely put that one, where all that battle, there's a lot of blood with that. And he also saves his people in Israel. We know people, the exiles, the survivors, the ones who believe in the Lord, will come back to Jerusalem. The ultimate here, we know that the Lord arrives at Jerusalem. He stands on the Mount of Olives, and it splits in the middle from east to west, and the Lord saves Israel. The outcomes for the beast and the false prophet, and they are seized and thrown into the lake of fire. That's going to be Revelation 19:20. The dragon also, we didn't mention any of him, but I like to be complete about, he's done for too. We also know he's called the serpent of old, or the devil, or Satan, and he is bound for 1,000 years and thrown into the abyss. Revelation 20, verses 2 and 3. And we also know those plagues happen on those nations that is mentioned in Zechariah. It's also mentioned in Revelation 19:21. Uh, and that was for my peace of mind completing this lesson. So those are to just let you know about the outcome. Anything else before we have finished here? Okay. Well, Carol will be back next week. I can tell you our lesson. It will be you'll need the correlation between Revelation, Daniel, Matthew, and 2 Thessalonians, that chart. You also want Matthew 24 and Matthew 25, which she has printed out for us too in lesson 11. All right. Well, thanks for studying with me, and you'll be glad to welcome Carol back next week. Thank you. It was a lot.